Hello, Merry Christmas to everybody. I've got a few days off between Christmas and New Year, and I thought I'll start the build of this lovely frame. This is SB5422, a 1982 SBDU 753 frame. That is going to be receiving this lovely anniversary group set. So, before doing that, before building it, there's a few frame prep things to do. Now I always build frames in the same way, so I always start by fitting the headset. I then move on to the bottom brackets, and then I can start bolting things like the chain sets, derailleurs, brake calipers into place. But it all starts with fork. Now, because this is a SBDU 753 frame, and because I'm fitting anniversary components to it, I want to do it properly. Now, you don't have to do all these steps. You don't have to prep a frame to build a bike, but if you have the tools and you have the knowledge, you might as well. It'll be having a Super Record headset fitted. This is just the standard Super Record headset that was available at the time, and the anniversary group didn't have a particular special type of anniversary headset, so it was just a standard Super Record headset. And the first thing you need to do is fit the crown race to the fork crown. But before you do that, there are several things you want to do. You want to clean up the surface of the fork crown. You want to get that nice and smooth, and that's going to form a parallel surface to the head tube when you eventually press the headset cups in. It's also going to clean the seat there, that little ridge there, where you're going to press that headset race onto. I've done a little bit of work on these forks, just tiny bits. I've just used the memory cloth to take off a little bit of surface rust on the column itself. There's still quite a little bit of corrosion in the threads there, so I'm going to clean up these fork threads as well. These headsets are very soft aluminium compared to the record style headset, which, as you can see from the corrosion on it, is steel. The Super Record headset, the aluminium threads are very soft, so you really want to make these threads as good as possible before you screw this little thing onto it. Especially the top nut. There aren't many threads in there, and they're very soft, very delicate, so if these fork threads aren't clean, you really are going to pull these threads off the top nut. And I can already feel there's a little bit of work there to do. So, before I get into it, let's just have a little history lesson of Snelly crowns and the SBDU. In 1980, I think it was, maybe it was even 79, they switched from the, let's have a look, have I got one? Must have one somewhere. Oh, I've got so many forks, so many forks. Here we go. This is the external semi-sloping Wagner, whatever you want to call it, fork crown. That was used on most SBDU 753 frames up until about 79. They then moved to this style of Snelly crown. This is the external fitting Snelly CC crown. External because the fork blades fit inside and the crown is external to the fork blades. These are the forks from my 1984 SB6560. So many frame numbers. So that was the first type of Snelly crown they used. They then moved on to the type that is on SB 5422. A Snelly crown, similar in style to the CC. It has this little deep section on there, on the front and the back. But it's an internal fitting fork crown, so the crown fits inside the fork blade rather than externally over the fork blade. That's the CC, which fits externally over the blade, and that's the SC, which fits internally inside the blade. And the join is nicely finished, so it looks like it's essentially a one-piece fork. And then, as time went on a little bit, in conjunction with the SC, they introduced the SC Aero or the SCA. So, similar sloping crown to the CC, internally fitting like the SC, but with an aero shape. It no longer has that deep section on the front and the back. It has this aero curve, even more pronounced on the back, which is almost like a sharp line there. So that's the SCA, SC. Right, enough of that. I could talk forever about forks and crowns. Back to this. One more little thing about early SBDU 753 forks. The columns are plain gauge. That means there is no internal button at the bottom. So the internal diameter here is the same as the internal diameter here. On a 531 fork, you have a tapering butt. Is it tapering? It's probably just a butt. But the inside of the base is thicker than the inside of the top. This is for more strength at the fork crown. So a good way to tell that is using a standard stem. The internal diameter here is 22.2, and your standard, in this case a Snelly XA stem, fits. This should also be 22.2, and as you can see, I mean it's clogged up with paint, so this won't be smooth, but there you go. That stem fits in there. That and that are the same internal diameter, plain gauge tubing. Back to the 531 fork. Fits lovely at the top, 22.2. But this should, fingers crossed, not go anywhere near. The reason it won't go anywhere near is because the bottom part of the steer column is butted. It's thicker on the inside than it is at the top. There you go, another little fact. Anyway, back to these. Right, first thing I'm going to do is cut this crown race. Now, I keep most of my Campagnolo tools in here now because the toolbox generally has loads of stuff on top of it, so it's just easier to get access to them on that toolbox. That's my crown race cutting tool. It's probably seen better days, and I think it needs a bit of a sharpening. It's a little bit dull, but it would do the job. What I want to do though is give it a nice clean cut with a sharp tool, and this just shows that you don't need an expensive set of tools to do the work. This is a Cyclus crown race cutter, marked there as 26.4, and this will do the job perfectly. Now, if you've never used a cutting or a facing tool before, they are different to a tap in the die. Put a little bit of a spring on there. And all this spring is doing is putting a little bit of constant pressure on that facing tool so that there is always downward direction on the cut. You don't need too much pressure. There you go, that should do it. Also, cutting fluid, because these tools, you don't use them very often, but you want them to stay sharp. So the best thing to do is apply a little bit of cutting fluid to the area into the teeth that you're cutting, and that should make the cut smoother and prolong the life of your tool. And it's just a case of turning in the direction of the cutting teeth. There you go. And as you turn, just give that a tighten. And as you turn, give it a tighten. A bit more of a tighten until I feel a bit more of a bite. Now all you're really probably going to do is remove a bit of paint that's sitting on top of the fork crown, just so that the fork crown race is going to sit neatly on top of the metal of the fork crown. Now, I mentioned before, this isn't a tap and die, so you don't cut and then back off, cut and then back off. You always just turn in the direction of the cutting tool. A little bit more. There you go. Now you can't quite see what's happening down here. There is some swarf. It is cutting. You can't really see that because the swarf is tiny. So I'm going to take this tool off, take the pressure off. Getting there. Nearly there. Here we go. There we go. Now it's important with your facing tool that you remove it in the same direction that you're cutting. If you back this off, you will just blunt in the teeth of the cutting tool. So turn it the way the cut goes, but put some pressure on it to pull it off as well. And it should free itself up. And it has done some work. Just give that a clean. And a wipe. Ah, that looks much better. So, two things the cutting tool has done is it has trimmed this seat, the collar of the fork column, down to the correct size to accept the 26.4 crown race. Now that won't slop on at the minute because that will need knocking on. But it's also, and I hope you can see this, that lovely clean metal edge right round the base. That's removed all the dirt and all the excess paint on that crown race. So that is a beautifully cut crown race. So I should have no problems at all seating that crown race correctly on that fork. How am I doing? 14 minutes. Wow. Well, we've got nothing else I want to do because it's going to be a long video probably. Right, next thing I want to do is deal with these fork threads. This is a British threaded fork. It's 1 inch, which is the external diameter, 22.2 on the inside, 25.4 on the outside. That's where it gets its 1 inch definition from. And it has 24 threads per inch. So it's a 1 inch by 24 TPI fork thread, a British standard. The top nut of the Super Record headset, you can also hopefully see it in there, is marked as England, even though it says made in Italy. It is England and it is 1 inch by 24 TPI. That and that is classed as a Class A fit. That thread is made for that thread. Now you will hear talk that an Italian threaded headset will fit. And in many cases it will. An Italian threaded headset is, there you go, 25.4 by 24, the 24 being the TPI. It's got the same number of threads per inch. And it's 25.4, which is the same outer diameter. Just on the British fork, it's classed as a 1 inch, and on the Italian, it's 25.4. But the slight difference is in the slight pitch of the thread. So an Italian headset will fit, but it's not a Class A fit, it's a Class B fit. So it will fit and it will work, but you need to be careful with the threads, especially if you're taking the headset on and off regularly. So that is an Italian thread on that fork, and that's a bit of an effort to turn it. Now you can imagine that's a big chunk of steel. If that was an Italian aluminium Super Record headset, you could be doing some damage to your headset threads. This is the British equivalent of that Campag tool, 1 inch by 24 steel. Just get it, catch a thread. There you go. You can see how much easier that spins on. There's no effort in putting that on at all. Whereas that Italian thread would go on, but it was tight. So I personally avoid aluminium headsets that have a different thread, even though people will say it will fit. It's worthwhile just getting the right size headset to fit the right size fork. So I don't think this is going to take too much cleaning. It looks worse than it is. It's a little bit of rust on the outside of the thread. So this is a Park tool, quite nice one. Has a little dummy cutter on the inside, which is more of a guide to guide it onto the fork before the cutter hits the threads. There you go. Now, same thing. Cutting fluid. Get some in there. Now what you're trying to do is just carefully catch your thread. There you go. Now I'm not cutting a thread, I'm just cleaning probably dirt out of the thread. It's a good thread on there, it's just dirty. So I'm just going to run that down. Add a bit more. Now this is a cutting tool that you can cut and release. Just spin that down a bit. Doesn't seem to be taking much out. I think that thread was quite clean. That thread probably would have just cleaned it with a bit of a wire brush. There you go. Has it hit some dirt, or has it just hit the bottom of the thread? It's hit the bottom of the thread. So just take that off. The smell of cutting fluid. There you go, done. Again, just clean that, just to get rid of any swap that might be lying around. Little wire brush. Just give that a clean up. Now just make sure that every little bit of deposits of anything that's cut out of those threads is out of the threads before I wind on that aluminium headset. That's clean. There we go. Lovely, clean, shiny, sharp threads. All that external rust has gone. It's back now to fresh steel. And remember, we've got the fresh seat for the crown race to sit on. So that Super Record headset should just put a bit of oil on there. Catch my thread. Perfect. No slop on there at all. Now I'll just show you, if I can, what an Italian thread might look like on there. Remember? No slop on there at all. Shouldn't screw that on so much. Anyway, there you go. There you go. Right. Italian Campagnolo Record headset in steel. Wheel screw on. It's a Class B fit. Screws on. You can't really tell, but there is a little bit of slop on there. I don't know if you can hear it. So it fits, but not as good as the British. Now if you imagine you're tightening that nut against your top nut, if that thread doesn't fit that thread perfectly, you are going to get a little bit of damage caused to the thread if you're not careful. So that's it for now. I'm going to have a cup of coffee, I'm going to come back and we're going to fit, hopefully, the crown race. Thanks for watching. See you later. Welcome back. Part 2 today of fitting the crown race to this set of 7x3 forks for SB5422. Now I've already cleaned and cut crown race on that, and I've cleaned up the fork thread and taken the surface rust off the column. I also explained a little bit about the difference of 74 crowns and the plain gauge steerer as opposed to a butted, single butted steerer. But now it's time to put that bit of metal onto that bit of metal. And as you can see, those two bits of metal don't quite fit. It's a press fit, an interference fit, where you have to knock or press or drift, whatever you want to call it, that bit of metal onto that seat. Now, what I generally do first is get a little bit of standard grease. Two things I think this thing does is it just provides a little bit of lubrication to seat that metal, to squeeze that metal on top of that other bit of metal easier. And because I've cut, now I've got exposed bare metal there, and I know it's going to be covered by the crown race itself. I just want to give that a coating of grease, just so that I can avoid for as long as possible any moisture getting in there and starting the corrosion of that fork crown. You see a lot of rusty fork crowns on bikes. I'm not saying that's how it happens, because this is a very water affected area of the bike, but any little helps. So back to the campfire tools. This is the crown race setting tool. You can either use it to knock it on, or you can hit it with a hammer. Usually it'll just go on by hand. Pop that on. Now, when you're using this, you can tell it's seated properly because there should be an audible change in the tone of the hit. The first few hits should be quite hollow and sounding, and then you should get a much more solid noise at the end. So we'll give it a go. So that just goes all like that. And it's just a case of hitting it quite hard. Listen to the noise, quite hollow. There you go. Much different noise. Most of the grease is squeezed out, but there will be a very, 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 very small amount probably still in there. Probably not much, but enough to do the job. But that noise is solid. That crown race is going no further. Now, there you go. That is a beautifully fitted crown race directly on the top of that cut fork crown. If everything is true on this bike, then that is perfectly true on top of that crown. So next up, in another video, because I've probably bored you all to death by now, next up is doing the same on the head tube. That crown race is perfectly straight against that fork crown. Now I need to make sure that there's no deviance in that head tube. Although head tubes are generally faced when the frame builder builds them, you do get paint over the ears, you do get misuse over the ears. So again, it's not critical that you do this. You can fit thousands of headsets and never had an issue, but the head tube will be faced. It's probably just a little bit of paint that needs to come off, but if I face that one and face that one and match it up with that faced fork crown, that headset should spin perfectly without any loose or tight spots. So that's the plan. But for now, that's it. SB 5422 has started with the crown race for the Super Record headset from the 50th anniversary group set fitted to the 753 fork. Thanks for watching.